Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dais, a podcast about the stories taking place in and around El Paso County, Colorado. I'm your host, Scott Anderson, and today I am here with the Executive Director of the relatively new Department of Community Resources, Vernon Stewart. How are you doing today, Vernon?
Good, Scott. Thank you for having me again. It's been a while, huh?
It has been a while. I first had you on, it was like September of 2022, so it's been over 3 years.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Yeah, that was the year I got here in 22.
Time flies.
And so it does fly. Life moves fast.
And we're going to talk about all the things that have happened since we last talked.
Oh, yeah.
But before, I want to quickly add that if listeners are interested in more stories about people doing good in and around El Paso County, or hearing from county leadership about local government priorities and how they operate, you can find additional episodes of this podcast on your podcast platform of choice. But again, to get started, Vernon, it'd be great if you could, for those who may not have been introduced to you the first time around, just give some background about yourself and how you ended up here in your current role with El Paso County.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so before I came to El Paso County, I was the Chief of Community and Public Affairs down at the Gulf Coast Veterans Healthcare System, working for the Department of Veterans Affairs down there. And I enjoyed working with veterans, and my medical center director at that time, he was looking at other opportunities, and I figured if there was an opportunity for me to look elsewhere, at that time would have been the best time to do it. And so I did. And so I looked at jobs all across the country. I was particularly interested in Colorado. I've always wanted to come to Colorado. And so there was a position for the Executive Director of Communications position, which at that time was a newly established department as well, because it was previously called the Department of Public Information, I believe. And so there were some changes that were needing to be made at that time as far as restructuring with the new county administrator, Brett Waters, who came in a little around that time. And so it made sense. I saw the need and the desire for that strategic move. And so I applied, put my name in the hat. Scott, I remember I did that interview, that first that one-way interview. I had COVID. I was sitting at my dining room table in Mississippi. I had COVID when I did that interview, and I just threw it in the air and hoped for the best. And they gave me a call a couple days later, and they wanted to bring me up here to Colorado Springs. They interviewed for the position, and the rest is history, man. They brought me up here as the Executive Director of Communications, and we hit the ground running. One of the first things that was in our list of priorities was building up the team. We were very understaffed at that time. There was interim leadership in place with Natalie Sosa, who was the deputy. And so, they needed some leadership, and they needed some direction on how to take the communications department to the next level. Being a new department, newly established, there were some expectations, and there were a lot of things that were on my plate when I first walked in the door. Redesigning the website, establishing an internal mechanism of communicating with our staff. The accessibility thing came on not too long after. And so there were some big projects that we had to kind of jump in. And this department, communications, is also responsible for some signature events for the county, such as our annual State of the Region address. And so that was probably one of the biggest things on my plate when I came in, just based on the time of when I came in. Mm-hmm. And so we hit the ground running, man. We did a lot of great things in communications. As you know, being in the communications department, you were one of our early hires. And so, I'm proud to see that you're still here. So we did some things right, man. We won some awards. We got some memberships with some of the industry leading communications groups like the National Association of Government Communications, the Public Relations Society of America, 3CMA, which is specifically for cities and counties, so that we can have that foundation, that network of people in our field that understand the challenges that we deal with. And so getting linked up with them, establishing what our communication strategy is, and just kind of building up a communications department. For those last few years, man, it was a joy. Great team to work with. You and the rest of the folks, Amy, Joe, Mike, the audiovisual team, all the folks in the communications department were bought in, and we just worked on trying to find ways to continuously raise the bar, man.
You found yourself in a position where you got to sort of do the same thing again with the same organization.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that a little bit.
I know it's really weird how I do find myself in this position of building something new or rebuilding something. And so I was minding my own business one Tuesday morning, preparing for a Board of County Commission meeting, and I was brought into the office to talk with Brett and Sonny about the need for some leadership in the Division of Veteran Services here at El Paso County. And so they came to me because me being a veteran, me understanding how El Paso County operates, what El Paso County stands for, the core values, and our strategic plan. I guess those were two of the fundamental boxes that could easily be checked by someone on their executive leadership team, just to keep things afloat until they can find a more permanent solution. And so I did agree to go over there on an interim basis. It was in November of 24 when I first came over here to Veteran Services. And yeah, there was some work to be done, man. There was some work to be done in a variety of different aspects. And so I came over here and I got right to work. And so I would say, 3 months went by, 4 months went by. We were doing a great job. A lot of great things were happening in this division. And so there were some conversations that were had with county administration on where to go from here. What do we even do with veteran services? We still have a Justice Services division that's still reporting to the Deputy County Administrator, and an Environmental Services division that could benefit from some leadership, more involved leadership as well. And so the decision was made at leadership. I wasn't involved in these discussions, but there was a decision made, a strategic decision, I would add, that maybe we combine some of these resident-facing divisions, some of these public-facing divisions that do service work for our residents, put them in one department, and let them run with that aspect of, this is a department that is very resident-facing, and their primary responsibility is serving our residents, whether that's through veteran services, justice services, or environmental services. And so they created the department and they posted the position. And so I applied, and the rest is history. I illustrated to them the vision of being able to take this department and meet some of those expectations that they have for some of these divisions, like what we want to do for the veterans in our community, some of the things that we want to do with justice services, and some of the things we want to do with environmental services. And so I sold them my vision, and so here I am, and I'm grateful to Brett Waters, the county administrator, the deputy county administrator, Sonny Bryant, and the commissioners for having the trust in me to be able to continue to build here. I feel like we did a really great job in communications when I first showed up, and building that department up to what it is today. And I feel like that track record, gave them the ability to put that trust in me again, to be able to do the same thing with community resources. So
now that you find yourself here on the community resources side, what do you see as your main responsibilities now that things have been built up, and the layout, I guess, of the department is kind of how you want it to be? What are some of your main responsibilities now?
Yeah, my main responsibilities, I would say, is to operate as a liaison between county leadership, the residents, and county staff within these divisions. And so one of the drawbacks that each of these divisions that I'm discovering had previous to my arrival and previous to this consolidation of divisions was being in touch with what's happening at the leadership at El Paso County, understanding what's happening countywide, understanding how they fit into the big picture, and understanding what the priorities, the strategic objectives are, and how we should be operating as a division. So fortunate for this new department is, as being the previous director of communications, I was very in tune with how leadership operates, the mindset of leadership, some of their priorities, some of their philosophies on how a county employee should operate, and how they should give back to the residents. And so I think that was one of the things that worked in my favor, having come from a position that was in all of those deep conversations downtown with leadership on where we go as a county. And so I was able to bring that with me when I came here to this new department. And now I find myself operating as more of a liaison, as a translator to some of these objectives and missions and directives that are coming from county leadership. And so you wouldn't expect a frontline person to know the why behind a lot of the decisions that are made here at the county, but I feel like as part of leadership in this organization, it's my job to communicate that why to frontline staff.
So you've talked a little bit already about how the department was created. What are some of the main goals that the department has?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll start with veteran services, one of the divisions in this department. One of the main goals in this division, of course, is to reach out and touch as many veterans as we can here within our county. And so the number as of right now, our best guess as to how many veterans we have that are accounted for in El Paso County is close to 100,000. But those are the veterans that we are aware of. And these are veterans that are registered to receive health care through the Department of Veterans Affairs. We know there's many more than that number of 100,000. And so we know they're out there, and we're trying our best to get in front of them to let them know that we are here. Let them know that we have services available to them at no cost to be able to improve their lives, basically. And there's two ways that their lives can be improved by the work that we do here. And that's them receiving the medical care through the Department of Veterans Affairs through these claims processes, and the monetary gain that they get with filing claims. Some of this stuff is life-changing. I was told about a veteran last week that's getting about $200,000 in back pay because of some issues that he has come across in his journey with the claims process. And so now he's going to get backdated several years for this claim that he's been pursuing for this amount of time. And we were able to give him the great news last week that, hey, man, you're getting some life-changing things coming your way. This is life-changing stuff. There was another veteran that we had not too long ago, similar boat, significant back pay check that he's going to be receiving. He bought 2 vehicles for each of his sons to be able to transport their children around. They didn't have vehicles. And so now that's 2 families that now have vehicles as a result of their father filing their claim. And so not only is it improved his life, it was a generational shift for that entire family, in order to be able to support them. And so seeing things like that and seeing the looks on these veterans' faces and hearing the stories of what they were able to do with the work that we've done here, I speak of how significant that is to an individual and how powerful that is to see those impacts to these families by the work that we do here. And so that's one thing about veteran services that I have really come to enjoy, seeing the life-changing aspects and how we can positively impact the lives of veterans who gave a lot to this country. And so that's for veteran services. Justice services, a different avenue, totally. And so, when it comes to justice services, this division is responsible for. One way that I would like to paint this picture is to kind of paint it in a way that this division is responsible for being responsible to the residents of El Paso County. And what that means is this division is responsible for finding alternative options for offenders in our justice system. It's really easy to imagine and to think when you paint it like this, we're all one bad decision away from being in a situation that some of these justice involved individuals are put in. And so we as human beings understand that, we believe in second chances, but the second chances have to make sense. If we have offenders that are doing the same thing over and over and over again, at what point do we raise our hand and ask a question? It's like, how much are we going to dedicate to this? And so our Justice Services Division is an element that tries to alleviate some of that. So we do a lot of pre-trial services and justice services. We do some community corrections. We give other options, especially for those first-time offenders. And, we try to give them other ways to pay their dues, to pay the consequences of bad decisions, because ultimately a lot of what we deal with, that's what it is, bad decisions. There are, of course, as we all know, situations where it's a little bit more egregious, more substantial, that, we need to take a look at it with a different lens. But when we're talking about minor offenses, first-time offenses, let's have some other options out there that we can give to some of these folks in our community. Environmental services, they're responsible for keeping our community clean. We have these events called clean sweeps, and where residents can drop off hazardous materials, old aerosol cans. I saw a big jar of mercury that was sitting in someone's garage that was taken up in one of these clean sweep events. You'd be surprised some of the things that residents will bring to our household hazardous waste facility. So for those of you out there that are listening that have old mattresses in your garage or in your backyard, or old tires or anything like that, pay attention to what our next clean sweep event is, because that is where you can responsibly drop off those materials. And so, we want to offer this to our residents, because if we do not offer that, where would you likely see a lot of these mattresses and tires? You'll see them just on the road somewhere. There's locations throughout the county where people have used as a unofficial dumping ground that we're having to go out and spend taxpayer dollars on cleaning up. And so we offer services like that to mitigate some of that. In addition to that, we do a lot of conservation easement and a lot of weed. Our noxious weed specialist is also in environmental services, Nick Daniel. He is a one-man show, but this guy, he is throughout, all about and around the community, ensuring that our weed management is within compliance and in place. And so there's just a lot of moving pieces. As you can tell, each of these divisions are pretty different, but they all do serve the residents pretty directly. And so I think one of my main roles in this is just providing oversight, providing strategic direction on how we serve our residents, and making sure that they understand, some of the county's priorities, goals, core values, and making sure that's translated in how we serve these residents.
So as someone who is in communications currently, I can see how coming from that side of things over to where you are now, it'd be a bit of a learning curve, perhaps.
Sure,
You just went through a whole lot of different things that this department is responsible for. What were some of the things that you were surprised to discover that these divisions and these teams were responsible for doing?
Hey, that's a great question. I have a very simple, grounded answer. I did not realize how little I knew about the justice system until I started interacting with our Justice Services Division. I understood the veterans services world just because I'm a veteran, previously worked at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I knew that language. I kind of came in and I was able to hit the ground speed walking. I'm not going to say running, but I was able to hit the ground speed walking. And so, but with environmental services and justice services, oh yes, definitely. There was a little bit of a learning curve. I remember Kathy Andrews, the division manager for environmental services. She's taking me around on a tour of the household hazardous waste facility, and I'm looking at things I've never even seen before. How they're collecting old oil, what they do with the aerosol cans, what they do with the tires, the mattresses, the big jar of mercury I found. That was my first time ever seeing anything like that, and so I underestimated that as well. And I knew coming in that there was going to be that learning curve because, I've been in communications most of my career, in government for that matter. And so when it came to learning other divisions and learning what they do, that took definitely some time for me to be deliberate and intentional with actually learning what they do. I don't need to get too far into weeds and knowing exactly every in and out of each person's role within this department, but I've always prided myself in understanding what each person brings to the county, what their basic job function is. And so I've spent a lot of time in this last year just learning what each person in this department does.
Mm-hmm. So you did, I think, a really good job kind of breaking down each division, talking about what they do and some of the things they're responsible for. I want to kind of hit each of those divisions real quick,
Sure.
A couple different questions. So for the veteran services side, obviously you mentioned you're a veteran yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of this work can probably feel very personal for you. So just talk to me a little bit about what it means to you to be able to serve fellow veterans here in El Paso County.
Yeah. I mean, I won't shy away from admitting that this work, especially with veteran services, really hits very close to home with me. I mean, I am in a position, I feel like, where I am at my strongest because every person that walks in the door to see one of our VSOs, I can immediately relate to this person. Not entirely, but I know some of the challenges and issues that they've had in the past when it comes to the military, their military career, and some of the benefits and some of the greatness that comes with that as well. But I know some of what the challenges could have been before they walk into the door to see one of our VSOs. I've been there personally. I mean, I won't hesitate to say it took me 10, 11 years for me to go to a VSO to get my claims stuff processed. I know that journey well. I know what it's like to be, to have that reckoning with yourself as, okay, I think I need to go speak with somebody about my military service and how it's impacting me today. And so me having the opportunity to reassure veterans when they walk in the door is that, hey, I know what you're going through. I know what you're feeling. I've been here. Let's see what we can do to help. I mean, I know that journey and it's so close to home with me that, when we do see these success stories of veterans that do get their claims successfully processed and what it does for them and their families, and we hear about it, they'll try and give us gifts and stuff, but as you know, as county and government employees, we have to shy away from receiving that, but they want to reward us because they look at some of these VSOs as heroes, man. We've changed their lives in some regards. We've explained a process or a system that they otherwise had no clue how to navigate. I will be the first to say that early on when I was trying to navigate the system, I would get frustrated and just shut down because it was just too much. And, some of the things that these veterans deal with, that's a difficult ask to make of them. Mm-hmm. And so having a free option in the community that these veterans can come in, sit with the VSO, tell them their story, and have that submitted to the VA and advocate on their behalf, it means the world to these veterans. And you can feel it when they walk in the door and after they leave. They keep coming back. These are lifelong clients that we have with them. They'll send their friends, they'll send their neighbors to us. And so we don't take that lightly. We take a lot of pride in that. And that's something that pushes these VSOs to continue to do great work when they're feeling burnt out. They're seeing 6, 7 veterans a day. There's literally no break from veteran to veteran to veteran for a lot of these VSOs. But what pushes them to continue to see veterans day after day, showing up day after day, is what that does on the other side for these veterans. It's life-changing stuff. VSOs have been in tears. I've been in tears just in my short time here because some of the work that's done in this office. And I can't speak high enough about some of the VSOs here and the work that's done in this office.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is important to reiterate is, not only do you have that personal experience and that understanding of, when that veteran walks in the door, you have an idea of what that story is. So I'm not going to say all because I'm not for sure, but sure. The majority of your staff yes. are also veterans Absolutely. And have been through that yes. and can, and come at it with that same experience. Yep. Someone like me, I'm not a veteran. I don't know what that's like. Sure. It would be very hard for me to, I think, make that initial connection and be like, oh yeah, hey, I get where you're coming. Like, no, I don't get where you're coming from. Right. But, like your team does, and they get it. And obviously, they've been able to help at this point, countless numbers of veterans and helping them with different things. And like you said, that's why these veterans refer their friends, refer their family, and say, hey, go to these people. They know what they're doing.
Yes. We were not lost on the concept that a lot of these veterans, when they try to go down this road seeking compensation for anything that may have happened during their military service, we understand that a lot of the interactions they have with different organizations, whether, in different states and places, are not always the most positive experiences. And so what we try to do here is try to, at the very least, it may not be the news that the veteran wants to hear when they meet with the VSO, but the easiest thing we can do is create a positive experience as much as possible. And so that's one thing from day one is that, hey guys, we need to make sure that the experience is positive. The results may not always be what the veteran wants, but what thing that we can control is the experience that they have when they're inside these four walls. And so that's the biggest priority for us, create a positive experience, because we do want these veterans to come back. We do want them to refer their friends. We do want them to tell other people about us, because we're free. We're here. But we can only get in front of as many veterans as we can. We can't touch everyone. And so word of the mouth, marketing efforts, outreach, all of those are other elements that we try to use to try and get the word out about what we're doing. But El Paso County, as you know, is a fast growing county. Veterans are coming here every day. And so we do our best with what we have, and we're going to keep pushing on, trying to do the best work we can to serve these veterans.
Awesome. Changing gears here a little bit, going to move on to Justice Services. So when you just hear the name, the Justice Services, may not get a full scale of the idea of what that division is all about. Yeah. You talked about them a little bit earlier, and I like what you said about they're responsible to the residents of El Paso County and helping find alternative options for offenders in the justice system. Talk to me a little bit more about the idea behind those around finding different options, as opposed to just saying, hey, you're in El Paso County, we have this one way of doing things, and that's how we're going to do it, right? Why having different options? Why is that important?
Yeah, no, and so one way that I will try and frame this up, and so mind you, I'm still, trying to wrap my head around this entire concept of justice and how justice works for counties and for the community. Mm-hmm. One thing to kind of I guess help with that and how and why it's important to have options is if you have a first-time offender, say, I don't know, they shoplifting or a minor offense. I'm not exactly sure what meets certain criteria to get in front of certain community corrections boards or anything like that at this point. But what I can say is that we want to take a look at each of these situations on a case-by-case basis. A lot of the times, we take into account different things like, is this their first offense? Are they, is it the same offense? And so different things like that kind of come up. And, I've sat on maybe about 4 or 5 community correction board meetings up to this point. And these meetings are very interesting because what will happen is the victim will come up and they'll speak about their experience with a perpetrator or an offender on why they think this person may not have been rehabilitated or if they have. And so they'll get in front of our community corrections board and plead their case on why someone should not be granted a release for that matter. And so, hearing their stories and hearing the decisions and how these decisions are made, because I know that specific board, the community corrections board, they do put a lot of time and effort really taking a look at every single case that comes before them. And so that aspect alone shows me that, wow, this is really serious. This is something that as a county organization, through our partnership with this volunteer community corrections board, we are really being very intentional with how and who we send back into society, whether they're ready to be, whether they have been rehabilitated or not. And so our main goal, of course, is to try and decrease recidivism repeating offenses. And so, we do want to try to give this person, that first-time offender, that benefit of the doubt, because there's that other side of the coin with you hammer somebody who's a first-time offender, you send them into the justice system. Is that good for them, or is it worse? Or is that going to have them become worse off? Those are the types of conversations that come up with justice services. We want to do what's best for the person and for our community. Sending a first-time offender into the justice system isn't always the best option, but it is an option. Right. So our job is to look at all the different options and see what makes the best sense for not only for that person, for that county, and for the residents that we serve.
Yeah, no one-size-fits-all approach.
Right. That's exactly what their role is they are trying to alleviate that one-size-fits-all because it doesn't work. You're going to have folks in a system that they probably should not have been in the first place, that have probably made them worse off, or vice versa.
Yeah.
The opposite is true as well. And so that's why careful attention and effort is paid, when we're talking about folks as they're moving through the justice system.
One of the things you mentioned with the environmental services team, you talked about they do these community clean sweeps. There's a household hazardous waste facility that exists. So talk to me a little bit more about those services and why they're valuable for the community at large.
Yeah. And so the clean sweep events, as I mentioned briefly, it's an opportunity for residents to come and drop off items that are likely sitting in their garage or sitting in their backyard, old mattresses, TVs, tires, any hazardous materials that they may have laying around, old paint. I know paint is a big one. That's what a lot of what I've seen at some of these clean sweep events. And so, few times a year, several times a year, we'll have these events over at our household hazardous waste facilities, and your cars will line up and they'll work themselves through the assembly line of dropping off materials. There's a mattress station, there's a tire station, there's a TV station, paints and all that stuff. And then there's other services that we offer at our environmental services division that's more daily. And so there's hours of operation where you can come and drop off paint or those old aerosol cans and other hazardous materials. And so there's certain criteria for that specific drop-offs, but those clean sweep events, those are the popular ones. We max out our participation each and every time. So we're actually exploring more opportunities to see if we can offer more of that, because we found that our residents really do like this offering. And each time I've been out, the line has been longer and longer. And so we're exploring different ways to offer that. But again, like I said earlier, I think this gives residents an option to dispose of certain materials responsibly instead of, keeping it in their garage like I tend to do, or, what other folks have done, which isn't advisable. It's just find an open road somewhere and try and dump it off on the side of the road. We see that time and time again. Yeah,
and the thing I always think about that kind of connects all these hazardous materials together is flammable.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And you talk about they're usually stored in a garage or a shed or something. Really easy for us. Just one spark and then there you go. Or again, off to the side of the road.
Yes.
One spark and then, now we have a much bigger problem than just something on your own property, right?
Absolutely.
And so, the word you said, responsible.
Yes.
Right? This is a responsible way to go about taking care of these things that, they're really difficult to offload.
Right. Like like any typical resident out, would they know immediately what to do with an old tire?
No.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that you
turn into a swing, maybe.
Right. Well, yeah, that's one option. But other than that, it's not something you can put in the trash.
Right.
So our job is to try and get that information out to the community. Say, hey, if you have tires, old mattresses, any hazardous materials, this is how you properly dispose of it.
Yeah.
And so trying to get that word out is most of the job. Trying to get the word out, especially as someone has a communications background, that's one of the biggest things that I want to do immediately. It's we need to get the word out about this service.
Yeah.
And so, we're doing what we can.
Right. So, You mentioned this earlier, and I tend to agree. Safe to say that your department is one of those more resident-facing groups. There's a lot of the departments within the county, some not exactly face-to-face with residents all the time, right? But for yours, I would say tend to be a little bit more so. So just recently, I know that you personally have been a part of a number of events in the community, including, like you mentioned, those community cleanup events. We had 250-year anniversaries for the Marines and the Navy, I believe, just recently. There was an honor bell ceremony that took place just a couple weeks ago, and more. I mean, I could go on listing things for quite some time. But just from your perspective, why are participating in events like that so important to your mission here as the head of the Community Resources Department?
No, absolutely. And so you talked a little bit about it, and I've mentioned it a couple of times. I've been in a support role for most of my career. Communications, that's essentially a support role. I've been at every level of government, and in each level, it's been a support role because you're not actively interacting directly with residents. You're not providing residents a direct service. And so switching from that support function into now a more resident-facing, direct client interaction department was a little bit of an adjustment, absolutely. But one of the things that I underestimated how much I would appreciate is what this new department is able to do as far as amplify the platform to be able to get a message out. And so I am, as you mentioned, finding myself a part of more and more events and outreach and partner meetings and events. But I see that as a very big positive because the primary goal, of course, is to get the word out about what we do in community resources, whether that's veteran services, justice services, or environmental services. And so, yes, I will look for every opportunity to try and talk about at least one of those three divisions or the county in general. And so I got asked to speak at UCCS a few months back about working in local government and county government. I took that as an opportunity to try and talk to that next generation of upcoming leaders and, in the workforce to appeal to them on why they should consider working for a government agency and why serving your community is a big benefit. One of the things, as I mentioned, I've been at every level of government, federal, state, city, and county. One of the things that I will say about what I appreciate most about city and county government is the ability to positively impact your neighbors, your neighborhood, and the community that you live in. You just don't see that type of immediate feedback or impact when you're working at a state or federal government, or at least I didn't in my experience. And so one of the things that I truly value now in my new role is seeing those positive impacts up close and personal. You didn't see that in communications. We just didn't. We were more of a behind the scenes, getting the message out about different things that we do in the county. But now in this new role, I am seeing these veterans personally up close. They're sharing, they're wanting to talk to me about the great work that the VSO gave, the great service that our VSOs have given them. So they're wanting to talk to me directly. And so I'm talking to residents and our clients directly now, which I didn't in communications. And so that has opened up a whole new world for me as to how county government can serve the residents that I did not see in communications.
Mm-hmm. We've been able to cover a lot of ground. I think that you've done a really good job iterating just how vast the experiences is within the Community Resources Department. Sure. You touch a lot of specific groups of people in very specific ways, but I think in ways that apply to the county as a whole. It's not just, anyone can take advantage of these services. So I think that's been really great. I just wanted to give you a kind of a final opportunity to maybe add something that we haven't talked about yet that you think would be important for residents to know, or maybe just reiterate something that you think is like the most important thing that we talked about today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I will use this opportunity just to, again, talk about our department and some of the things that we're able to offer, the listeners out there of this podcast and the residents of El Paso County that, veteran services, starting with veteran services, we're here to help. If you are a veteran or you love a veteran, or if you're a friend of a veteran or you know a veteran, and they have expressed a desire to work with the VA on, reconciling what happened within their military service and some of the impacts as they're going about their life post-military. We're here to serve. So come see us. We're at no cost to you. At least come and have a conversation with one of our VSOs. At least ask the questions and see if there's something there that we can do for you. I mean, it can't hurt anything to ask. You lose nothing, but you have so much to gain by just walking in the door or picking up the phone. Let us be the ones to help you figure out if there's a path. You don't do yourself any service if you don't ask the question. This is something that is part of your military service. This is an option for you. This is a service for you now. We're here. Let us be of service to you. And so that's for veteran services. Come see us. We have 2 locations. We have veteran service officers at Mount Carmel, and we have our main location over here on Championship View next to Costco on Powers. Just walk in the door. Come talk to one of our VSOs and see if there's a path for you. Justice services, as I mentioned earlier, we're all one bad decision away from being in a similar situation as a lot of the clients that we serve in justice services. So if you are a loved one or having a difficult time navigating that process or have questions, that division is here to serve as well. We try to do very good work in there. We understand the responsibilities to our residents, to our taxpayers, and to the community we serve. And so very, very passionate people in justice services that deal with a lot of victims and a lot of offenders each and every day. And, I can't say enough good things about the folks in that division. Christine Burns and Don Montoya and their leadership with the team over there are doing great work for our community. And, I'm excited to get plugged in more with them and continue to see what we can do to raise the bar. Environmental services, similar deal with environmental services. We're here to serve. We have these services that are available to residents, and we will be raising the bar and getting a little bit more deliberate with our outreach efforts so that residents do know what these services are that are available to them and how we can be responsible stewards of our environment here in El Paso County. And so I say all of that to say that in each of these divisions and in this department as a whole, one thing that I just want to ensure that, the listeners, your listeners out there that are listening to this and residents who may come up and interact with each of these divisions is that these are passionate people that are working in community resources. These are folks that I talk to each and every day, and I hear what motivates them, what drives them to offer a good service and the work that they do. And it's what motivates me. It's what keeps me showing up each and every day, because these folks want to do good work for the residents here in El Paso County. And the least I can do is try to clear a path and make it as easy for them as possible to be able to provide those services. Operating as that liaison, offering some strategic oversight and direction and some leadership that I've been able to gather in my journey. And so if I can offer that to this team to be able to better serve the residents of El Paso County, that's a small ask of me, man. And I will show up for it each and every day.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Vernon. I appreciate you taking the time today to talk through your department, and then again, just for what you do for El Paso County. So thank you for the time.
I appreciate it, Scott. We'll do it again in 3 years.
Well, if we're all still here, it's a possibility.
We'll see where life takes us in another 3 years.
That's right. That's right. Well, if you are interested yourself in listening to additional episodes of Beyond the Dais, be sure to look for us on Podbean or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.